was also, so another thing that's interesting in the movie of kind of like America's effect on Vietnam and like this lasting kind of cultural effect that really took place. And you see that more when they first land in the city, because in the city, it's more like culturally, they're trying to represent, they're trying to be as American as possible. Like in that first city,
they have the McDonald's.
They have the McDonald's. Shit, yeah. The bar they go to is Apocalypse Now themed, and it's very much of
it's like culture, like regurgitating itself. It's so interesting.
And you see that of the Vietnamese woman who has a daughter who is half black.
Yes,
and she was saying like, we were treated terribly because she was half black. And it was the Americans who came over who taught us that, who kind of brought racism to us. So it's not only like, you know, McDonald's and, you know, Apocalypse Now, but it's also like the dark side of American culture that came in and influenced Vietnam. I mean, I obviously don't know in real life how this is, but the movie seems to suggest that the Vietnamese people were taught racism by the Americans who came over.
I mean, that brings a whole wider discussion, you know, like how diverse is Vietnam?
I don't know.
I don't know, but I'm just saying I don't think they're as diverse as America is. So, I mean, when you're not exposed to different, you know, cultures and races, maybe racism doesn't rear its head because you're just not aware of it. I don't know. I'm just guessing at this point. I thought it was also interesting how she was talking about how, you know, I guess she's saying she was a prostitute.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a whole interesting thing because obviously there's a lot of American soldiers that were partaking in probably rape, or prostitution, or maybe consensual relationships, but yet still being like racist towards
I mean,
their quote unquote enemy. No, but I'm just saying, yet you're having sex with these people. It's just a very bizarre, I don't know how you kind of do that dance in your head mentally, but. And
then later on, when another point that I wanted to make about how the lasting effect of what a war can have on a country, when they're talking to like the French exporter, who he's the guy that's going to help them get the gold out of the country to like do it.
He's still acting like,
he's acting like a typical French guy, but they bring up World War II, and I think it's very...
You should explain what you mean by that before you just say something like that.
The American stereotype of what Americans think French people are like.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I'm glad you explained that. Yeah,
yes,
because that's not your thought.
That's not how I think.
Yeah.
But it's funny that he brings up World War II, and Paul brings up World War II, and he's basically trying to say like, you need to do this for us because you're French and we're American and you owe us from World War II.
Which is a thought that still occurs. I remember
100% that still occurs.
Especially in Iraq. Like,
yes.
That was a whole thing.
That they still owe us from World War II. Yeah. And you're talking about, because Paul, who's the character who says that, later on when they're kind of like accosted by this Vietnamese market, this guy who's selling chickens, and he's kind of accosted, and he's telling them like, you guys murdered my family, you guys murdered my mom, you guys murdered my dad. And Paul is the one who's kind of saying like, we had nothing to do with that, like you have no reason to be angry at us.
But they did.
Well,
I mean, that's a different example. Like,
but what I'm saying is kind of like, wars in general have this strange way of you equate the entire country by what the soldiers did, and
yes,
and it,
or what the government directed the soldiers to do.
But when you're talking about you still owe us from World War II because you're French and we're American.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, neither of them fought in World War II. And it kind of makes that connection of like, okay, well, Paul might have not killed their family directly, but Paul is still American and he's still Vietnamese. So do you see the connection that I'm kind of trying to make?
Well, yeah, I mean, the only difference is that Paul was a Vietnam vet, so he very well could have. It's a little more direct than like, you know, it's like two fucking morons in their 20s talking about, oh, the fucking, you know, France should have supported. Like, dude, you were like 3 generations before you came around when that was a relevant fucking conversation. But I don't know, people are weird with, you know, nationalism, really.
Yes, yeah.
I think you bring up a good point, which is, you know, just to remember that the citizens of a country are not representative most times of the actions that the government are taking out.
Yeah.
You know, and even sometimes the soldiers, even though they may be directed and, you know, it's everyone's in, you know, like fucking not Nazi, you know, Nazi youth or something like that. It's
the
like
Hitler Youth.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, they're fucking kids. Like,
yeah.
It's crazy.
I remember people were like criticizing Pope Benedict about that.
Exactly.
But also, I was searching. He was 5 years old when, like,
you're not making exactly your own decisions at 5.